Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, ich darf Sie ganz herzlich willkommen heißen im Körber-Forum. Unser Thema heute Abend lautet Zukunft im Süden? Fragezeichen. Wir wollen uns mit der Frage beschäftigen, was eigentlich der Mittelmeerraum für uns hier in Deutschland, in Europa bedeutet und wie wir die Zusammenarbeit mit den Ländern in Nordafrika weiter intensivieren können. Wenn wir in Nordeuropa oder in Deutschland an das Mittelmeer denken, haben wir ja oft so Assoziationen wie der Lieblingsitaliener oder der Urlaub. Für viele Nordeuropäer war das Mittelmeer oder ist das Mittelmeer Sehnsuchtsort und Mythos zugleich, kann man vielleicht sagen. Die Frage ist, wie ist das eigentlich heutzutage? In Zeichen der Eurokrise, wo es offenbar, oder das kann man jedenfalls oft lesen in der Zeitung, in der Presse, doch deutliche Unterschiede zu geben scheint in der Art und Weise, wie Nordeuropäer und Südeuropäer ticken. Wie ist das, wenn wir uns die Länder in Nordafrika ansehen, den viel gerühmten arabischen Frühling? In welcher Verfassung ist der arabische Frühling heute? Er hat sicherlich viel von seiner Strahlkraft verloren. Wir sehen, dass die Polarisierung zwischen islamischen Kräften und anderen politischen Kräften in Ländern wie Ägypten deutlich zugenommen hat, aber auch in Tunesien stellt sich die Frage nach der Stabilität dieser Transformationsstaaten. Und vergessen wir nicht, über den arabischen Frühling vergessen wir nicht, dass jedes Jahr sich zigtausende von Flüchtlingen auf den Weg machen von der nordafrikanischen Küste Richtung Europa, wo sie bessere Lebensumstände erhoffen für sich, aber nicht unbedingt willkommen sind. Frage ist also, ist der Mittelmeerraum heute immer noch dieser Sehnsuchtsort, dieser positiv bewertete Mythos, oder hat er sogar ein bedrohliches Element? Darüber wollen wir heute diskutieren. Und der renommierte Politikwissenschaftler Claus Leggewie, der heute bei uns ist, sagt, nein, der Mittelmeerraum ist keine Bedrohung, sondern er birgt große Chancen für Europa, wenn Europa es denn versteht und seine Partner in Nordafrika versteht, diese Chancen zu nutzen. Und ich freue mich sehr, dass wir drei ganz exzellente Gäste heute Abend bei uns haben, um mit uns über dieses Thema zu diskutieren. Und ich möchte zunächst vorstellen Herrn Fathallah Sijilmassi. Herr Sijilmassi ist seit 2012 Generalsekretär der Mittelmeerunion. Was es genau mit der Mittelmeerunion auf sich hat, werden wir gleich in der Diskussion erfahren. Er ist Politik- und Wirtschaftswissenschaftler, marokkanischer Diplomat und hat früher unter anderem in Italien, Frankreich und Spanien im diplomatischen Dienst gearbeitet. Herr Sijilmassi, ganz herzlich willkommen im Körber-Forum. Zweitens darf ich ganz herzlich begrüßen den Politikwissenschaftler und Direktor des Kulturwissenschaftlichen Instituts Essen, Claus Leggewie, der heute Abend bei uns ist, von dem ich vorher in der Begrüßung schon gesprochen habe. Er ist Träger zahlreicher Auszeichnungen, akademischer Auszeichnungen. Seit Dezember 2008 ist er Mitglied des Wissenschaftlichen Beirats der Bundesregierung für globale Umweltveränderungen und last but not least, er hat ein Buch geschrieben in der Edition Körber-Stiftung mit dem Titel unserer heutigen Veranstaltung Zukunft im Süden, wie die Mittelmeerunion Europa wiederbeleben kann. Dieses Buch ist sehr lesenswert und auch nicht besonders teuer. Und Sie sind herzlich eingeladen, nach der Veranstaltung, wenn Sie mehr über unser Thema wissen wollen, das Buch am Ausgang käuflich zu erwerben. Herr Leggewie, herzlich willkommen im Körber-Forum. Ja, was wäre das spannendste Gespräch ohne einen guten Moderator? Und ich freue mich sehr, dass wir einen ebensolchen Moderator gewinnen konnten, heute Abend die Gesprächsführung zu übernehmen. Herrn Erkan Arıkan, er ist Journalist, arbeitet beim Norddeutschen Rundfunk als Reporter bei NDR Aktuell und NDR Inforadio. Weitere Stationen in seiner Karriere als Journalist waren beim WDR, bei NTV und bei Phoenix. Herr Arıkan, herzlich willkommen. Ich wünsche Ihnen allen einen spannenden, interessanten Abend. Wie immer haben Sie am Ende der Diskussion Möglichkeit, Fragen zu stellen. Und meine Herren, the floor is yours.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I also want to welcome you here this evening here at the Körber Foundation. I think the topic, the South, the future of the South, is a very interesting topic, especially after the Arab Spring. And I'm really glad to welcome you again, Mr. Sijilmassi and Professor Leggewie, because the Mediterranean Union, I mean, we have to make it, well, it's very different to say Mediterranean Union or Union of the Mediterranean. What's the correct form, Mr. Sijilmassi?
Union for the Mediterranean.
Union for the Mediterranean. Why it's not called Mediterranean Union?
Well, there is a history to, we diplomats, we like to play with words. And especially at the highest level, there was this summit in 2008. And actually before that, there were some debates. One idea was to call it the Mediterranean Union. It was felt by some that it was too restrictive from the point of view of the geography. And second, that it was a little bit too strong to call it a union at a stage where obviously there were still some ways to go forward. And then we started thinking, well, they started thinking about a union of the Mediterranean. But there was a consensus to call it Union for the Mediterranean. The idea was to say that there is a consensus to work together towards improving the situation for the Mediterranean. So that's why there's absolutely no difference for you in the room. I acknowledge that, but the reality is that it's now called officially the UFM, the Union for the Mediterranean.
Isn't there, well, yes, Professor Leggewie?
It makes a difference, I guess, because he's a diplomat, I'm not.
Actually, I wanted to ask you this question, Professor Leggewie. Mediterranean Union sounds, in my ears, a little bit better than Mediterranean or Union for the Mediterranean, isn't it?
This was exactly the debate in 2008, and I don't know if you know that you are members of the Union for the Mediterranean. You are part of it, so it's including not just the Mediterranean countries, some Arab countries, some Southern European countries, but it also includes Germany and other members of the EU. So this is a huge project. This is not restricted to the Mediterranean area, as has been the plan of Nicolas Sarkozy. And Nicolas Sarkozy, his idea was exactly to have a kind of counterweight against the German hegemony in Europe. I can tell you are more prudent with that. And he was thinking about having the Germans busy in the east, and the French and the Italians and the Spanish busy in the former Mare Nostrum of the Romans, in this area around the Mediterranean coast. And there was a decision in 2008, a clash, a certain clash between Sarkozy and Merkel, and who won, of course, Merkel. And she's the mother of the Mediterranean, and she made you all members of the Mediterranean Union.
I think, if you allow me,
Please.
now that that has been said by him, which is, it's true. No, I think that the decision to have all 27, soon to be 28 countries from the European Union as a bloc in the UFM was a very, very good decision. Because the European Union has a coherence. And obviously, there are mechanisms also, not only by the member states, but also by the European institutions. There are policies, there are strategies, there are financial tools, and there are other tools that are there in order to promote the relation of the European Union with the southern shore of the Mediterranean. So it made sense that all this coherence through the European Union, 27, soon to be 28 with Croatia's membership in a few weeks, July 1st, that the 27 members of the EU be in the European Union, sorry, in the UFM. And indeed, Germany, and I will maybe elaborate on that in a little while, is not only a member of the UFM, but is a very active member of the UFM. And when we talk about the UFM, we talk about 800 million people. 800 million. So when you take it as a group of 800 million and you compare the big blocks around the world, it starts making some sense and it starts giving the appropriate volume. Of course, in details, there are still some evolutions to go through, but still we're talking about 800 million people.
Allow me to interrupt you in
Please.
that case, Mr. Sijilmassi. Actually, I wanted to ask you this question a little bit further, but you said 800 million people, members of the UFM, but what kind of power does the UFM has concerning to the European Union? I mean, is the UFM a partner, a legal partner for the European Union? Or does, like some other politicians will see it, a kind of threat for the European Union? And I'm still waiting from Professor Leggewie that he will interrupt me now, but I come later to you. But first of all, you, what do you think about that?
Well, let us state facts first, before we have interpretations and debates about ideas, which of course anyone can have his own idea.
Sure.
But let's focus on facts. The UFM in 2008, as it was created after the debate, but when it was launched formally in July 2008 in Paris, it had two main objectives. The first one was to take stock of the pluses and minuses of the Barcelona process.
Which was initiated in 95.
Which was initiated in 95 in Barcelona, that's why it's called the Barcelona process, and in which Germany, just as all the other European Union members, were members. So the participation of all the European countries, European Union countries, to the Mediterranean affairs was not triggered by the UFM. It was there before, within the framework of the Barcelona process. But obviously, this Barcelona process, it may be not the appropriate forum to discuss it, but it had some pluses and minuses in its balance sheet and its assessment that we can make of the Barcelona process. So the first thing was to take stock. And among the specific things that we took stock of was that perhaps it was considered as too much north towards south. And so there was a will, which I think was the good decision, to make it a co-ownership institution, north and south together, not just the European Union having its policy in the Mediterranean, but actually to trying to build something together, and probably we will discuss that also in the opportunity side of it. This co-ownership was institutionalized through two co-presidents, and this is the point I wanted to make in answering directly to your question. Today, and since March 2012, the co-president for the North is the European Union as an institution. So what is the European Union, or what is the UFM to the European Union? Well, the European Union institutions are the co-presidents of the UFM. So there is a direct involvement. The co-president from the south is Jordan. So it is built on co-ownership to make it an institution that works in a much more partenarial way to work. And it is for that specific reason that your humble servant is in front of you today, because the Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean comes from the south. So this is why, as you have recalled, I'm a Moroccan diplomat. And the headquarters are in the north, so to speak, in the south with regard to Hamburg, but in the north with regard to the South Mediterranean, they are in Barcelona. So that was the idea of this co-ownership and this co-management of the institution.
Professor Leggewie, concerning to your book, how can the UFM or the Mediterranean area help the Europe countries, or especially Germany, for example?
Yeah, we should think about the potential that this region has. To most of us, it looks like a zone of danger now in these days. Since 2008, the economic crisis, the refugees, Islamism, terrorism, all this is associated, as I would say, falsely, with the Mediterranean area. I'm very much in favor of a strengthening of the European Union, of the Mediterranean Union, or the Union pour la Méditerranée, because I think for the moment it's underestimated by the North. It can only underperform because it has restricted means, not just financially, organizationally, but also because it's not given the power you were asking for by the European institution. This is the problem. So I'm not against, of course, not against this union. I would like to strengthen it because I see a lot of potential there. And we have to still to think about the prehistory of even the Barcelona process, which was, of course, the engagement of European powers or the European Union in the conflict between Israel and around Palestine. This is exactly one of the reasons why this was created in the 90s as a part of a peace process, but not just the Soviets and the Americans were important, but also the European Union wanted to play a role. And of course, the division or the cleavage between Palestinians and Israelis is one of the reasons why the European Union why the Mediterranean Union never could fly, because it's always a strong impediment to the development of this union. Another one is, of course, economic imbalances between the North and the South. And since 2000, they have even aggravated. It has become worse, not just because of the euro crisis, but also because of the situation of most of the economies in the Maghreb and Mashrek, where you have sometimes 40–50% of the youngsters unemployed. So this is an economic imbalance, which is now kind of duplicated by the imbalance between the southern and the northern European states in the Eurozone. So a lot of problems for this union, and that makes the Mediterranean Union underperform because, in my opinion, if we would focus on this region, not just exclusively on this region, but also on this region, not just East-West, not just the Baltic Sea, not just transatlantic free trade arrangement, we would have a large potential in the south for...
What kind of potential is it?
Yeah, this is, first of all, it's an economic potential. The masses, so to speak, who were active in the Arab rebellion, they deserve an economic opportunity. This is the first thing. And they can have it by the development, an autonomous development, a real development of their countries. Morocco has very good performance now. Turkey has a good performance. But others like Egypt and Tunisia, Algeria are in difficulties. And so what they need, particularly the young generations there, and in many countries, like in your country, there's like half of the population is under 25 or 30. This is a huge proportion of the population needs a chance, needs economic opportunity. And they are not given by this traditional mode of division of labor between the North and the South. It's about rent economies, like exportation of oil and gas for countries like Algeria. It's tourism. It's also a rent economy which is not really equally distributed and does not develop the countries in the sense of a development and a strong autonomous development for the population which is living in these countries. So it's extracting money from these regions. I think the traditional economies like agriculture have to be developed. So there's a lot of things that can be done and can be triggered and can be developed by the European Union towards the south, because otherwise this is really a zone of insecurity and danger in the future. And we should have, of course, a regulation concerning the refugees coming from the south, most of them coming from Africa or from Asia now. So we have a lot of problems there, and it's not, we cannot solve these problems by simply letting them go. In a way, many people would hold now in Northern Europe, please let them go. Starting with Greece and continuing with Spain, and we call them the pigs. In Brussels, there is this acronym for Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, calling them pigs, like Schweine. So this is unintentioned, as you know, but it sounds very, very bastard, very nasty, how these countries are called. So we should have a program, not austerity and not sterile growth programs as we had in the past, but we should develop growth programs, development programs for this region around the development of a kind of softer form of tourism, around energy cooperation between the North and the South, around the development of the sea, marine development in this region, and of course the economic development based on solar and wind energies all over this region. Because this is my last sentence, this is the region that could provide energy for the rest of Europe. A small part of the Sahara could provide energy for whole Europe if we have a super smart grid from the Sahara to Norway, and that would be an interesting idea to have if it's not a neo-colonial one.
Very interesting. That's typically a very important sentence in one of your chapters in the book. But Mr. Sijilmassi, do you need kind of spokesman like Professor Leggewie is for the UFM? I mean, is the UFM or other Mediterranean countries underestimated by the European countries, like Germany, for instance? Or do you think that the Mediterranean has got the standing where it is right now, and we have to support what Professor Leggewie says?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I agree with most of what Professor just said, and he's such a good believer and lawyer for the Mediterranean affairs that I would recruit him if it was not so expensive. But it's too expensive for me.
I will be in retreat in 2 years, so we can talk about it.
He will retire, then you can have him then.
But he will be even more expensive. No, I agree with the assessment that we should and could do more. The nuance I would like to share with you here, and just throwing ideas to the debate and for your own knowledge, is that I believe that it would be a reduction of image to say that today the South is only danger, is only threat. The opportunities that you have very rightly mentioned, they are already there. They are already witnessed and lived by a lot of German companies, a lot of European companies, a lot of European stakeholders, and for that matter, other places around the world. And before I was Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean, I used to be the General Manager of the Moroccan Investment Agency, the Investment Development Agency. And I can tell you that we have conducted a lot of very interesting partnership of investments of more or less around the world into our part of the world. Let me just give two examples that are of course, big examples, but behind them a lot of SMEs continue coming to the region. The first one, and I will cite two examples. One that you can guess that it's French, and the other one you will not guess from which country it is, because it's not from this part of the world. But Renault, the French car manufacturer, has invested very heavily in the north of Morocco in 10 years. 1 billion euro investment for the production of 400,000 cars. I know it's not much with regards to the production in Germany, but it's important with regard to the production, and especially the one that is export-oriented, to use the platform of Tangemed, which is one of the biggest ports in the Mediterranean, as a platform for investment of export to the rest of Europe, but for that matter also to the rest of the MENA region, as well as for Africa. So considering Tangemed as a hub for export is an interesting perspective in what we are trying to build in this idea of the Mediterranean competitiveness. One could very easily make the case also for Tunis or Cairo or any other area of that kind, but it so happens that at this present moment we have a very major European car manufacturer who have made an investment, a massive investment in Morocco to export to Europe mainly. The second example I wanted to share with you is the Canadian aerospace manufacturer Bombardier, which made a massive investment in November 2011. I'm mentioning the date because it was the so-called Arab Spring. And throughout this Arab Spring, there were negotiations between the Moroccan government and this aerospace airplane manufacturer Bombardier, who is number three or four in the world in terms of airplane manufacturing. And they made a huge investment in Casablanca. And I can also refer to a lot of SMEs from Germany that I used to deal with when I was in Morocco. And they used to also have a lot of activities in Tunisia, in Egypt. And so the fact is, and this is the point I wanted to make, is that the opportunities are already there. And as Professor was just saying, they can be developed much further. But let us not look at the south of the Mediterranean only as threat, as danger, because as we are speaking, there are opportunities, there are benefits, there is a win-win situation that is already proving its efficiency on the ground. We can and we should and we will develop it further.
But Mr. Sijilmassi, you give now two examples. One is France and the other one is Canada. But right now I think most of the European Union countries say we have to deal with ourselves right now. We have to, like Claus Leggewie said, we have our pigs here. We have Portugal and Italy and the other countries where we have to do right now a lot of for their economy.
Yes.
And we have right now not the time or the money or the time or whatever to help the Mediterranean countries. Do you think that it's had to do hand by hand, or do you think that Europe should solve their problems first and then come to the Mediterranean, or is there side by side going on?
No, what I believe in is common future and common interests. This is what I believe in. I believe that the relation between Europe and the south of the Mediterranean is not about development policies. It's about partnership policy. It's about win-win. It's not about Europe putting financial aid to the south. It's about Europe actually having benefits in the south. Because, as we were saying, there are opportunities and opportunities can grow.
Yeah, but first of all, Europe has to develop a little bit
after
they
I believe that the development of a partnership with the south of the Mediterranean is one, I'm not saying I'm saying one of the solutions to the crisis. Because one of the elements of the crisis is competitiveness. Competitiveness with regards to other parts of the world. Okay? I was reading the papers yesterday, and Brussels, the European Commission, of course, with the decision, collective decision by the European Union member states, is about, or has, I'm not sure about the exact entry into force of the decision, to take some kind of action to protect itself from some exports from China, especially in the telecom industry and in the renewable energy industry. This is what I was reading, and the solar energy. The integration of the markets and of the production within the Mediterranean is a solution, participates to the solution. Again, I'm not saying it is the solution, but I'm saying that in a strategic vision, long-term vision, the relation between the European Union and the Mediterranean can be one of the solutions to put more growth in the European market, but not only in the European market, but also in the Mediterranean market. And of course, that will lead, it's an obvious evolution, it will lead to improve the negative parameters of lack of stability in some countries, illegal migration in some areas, or security-related issues.
But these are the main problems that Germany or the other EU countries are concerned about.
Well, if you are talking about security-related issues, let me say that it's not only European countries that are dealing with it, also the Mediterranean countries are dealing with it. It's not only the European Union that is preoccupied by some parameters and some elements security-related. Let us go a little bit further, if you allow me.
Let me please. I will allow you. I will allow you. But first of all, I want to ask Professor Leggewie whether he agrees with that economic issues that you.
I was about to say
about.
something interesting.
I believe, and I will still have it in my mind, and I will give you the word afterwards. But first of all, Professor Leggewie, do you agree with that? What Mr. Sijilmassi said about that?
In general, yes, with a slightly different orientation. So let us come back to these two examples you were giving us. First of all, I wasn't saying that the Mediterranean area is a threat, but it's perceived as one, and this is a wrong perception.
No, I say it.
Yes.
Because
and I think you are wrong if you feed this perception, because what we're doing right now is saving banks, mostly from France and Germany, on the risk of the European taxpayer. That's what we do for the South, nothing more. And what we then put into these countries is a strict regime, austerity regime, which shrinks these countries, which hinders growth. And the alternative might be, given the program, the platforms of François Hollande and others, turning to the left now, is a equally sterile program of growth, simply growth. I would say that both strategies are wrong. The growth strategy is also not appropriate to the problems the populations in the South are facing now. Let me give these two. Let me come back to these examples you were giving. This is of course a success to have Renault and Bombardier in Morocco, but I think it's not the first priority. I think even an equal development for the Maghreb, for example, doesn't come from car manufacturing and airplanes. It comes from infrastructure, it comes from a sane agriculture, it comes from consumer industries, etc., for the population there, because exportation creates more problems for this region, as you know. Since years, these countries from Greece to Morocco were fighting for having these exportation sectors in their economy, and most of the programs failed. I think what we need is a development directed towards the region itself. First of all, a development not of the north and for exportation of cars to the north, or for the production of cars for the middle classes in these countries. Let's think about those who were on the streets in the Arab Rebellion. Let's think about those young people who were fighting for labor and dignity. And how can this be done on a, I would hold, very different economic model that has to not just to be applied for Southern Europe, of the Mediterranean area, but also for our countries. And I would say that we would need another strategy developing these countries with the resources they have, and the renewable sectors would be the sector I would prefer in this regard. And there are projects in Morocco, there are projects even in Greece, there are projects some in Tunisia, but the huge thing like Desertec has never really flown until now, because it's not in the political will of the northern countries and the northern corporations, and it was not very well received in the southern countries too, because it has a slightly colonial.
So we will never have energy from the Solartech system?
No, we will have this, but we would have to have it on a different basis of really, I would say, we shouldn't treat these countries as those who deliver Northern Europe with energy. We should have a basis for their own development based on renewable energies in the south. It's solar and wind and other elements of renewables, and that can, of course, then be exported, for example, from Tunisia to Italy, and can be put into the European super smart grid. That can be the case in the long run, but the first concern of these countries must be to give an economic opportunity to those who were on the streets, not just in the Arab countries, but also in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, in Greece, and are really suffering from the austerity politics of the European Union. And I would say this can be used by the European Union. The European Union has underused or underperforming regional funds. So you could set up a completely new program of funding, for example, renewable investments in Southern Europe, in Northern Africa. I wouldn't make a difference now between the Southern European and the North African countries in the Mediterranean Union. You can use regional funds exactly for these investments and can direct interesting investments for the future into these countries based on energy, as I said, on a different form of tourism, softer form of tourism.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, a softer form, but there are so many things that you said right now, and I want to come back to that, and I want to give you the word again to tell me the two very important things. But you said softer tourism. What do you mean with softer tourism?
Yeah, you know what a non-soft tourism is, you know?
No.
You have 3 weeks vacations, okay? You decide where to go, where's sun shining. You have the 4 or 5 S in the Mediterranean Sea, sun, spirits, and we wouldn't mention the fourth one, sex.
It's not in our religion, no.
Okay, we wouldn't do that. This is the reason why you go there, and this is reasonable. So why wouldn't you? So it is okay. And then you think about the companies who direct you towards the south, to the Mediterranean countries. It's TUI or others, Hapag-Lloyd, Cooks, whoever. So where does the profit go? There is no trickle-down effect into these economies themselves. They are very dependent. It's a kind of new form of rent economy. And I think a better form of development can be done with what is called agrotourism, can be called sanfter Tourismus, a form, smooth tourism, if you like, a form of tourism that really serves the needs of the local population, that gives you another form of distraction during your vacations, that gives you another kind of cultural contact with people in these regions.
So no more all-inclusive tourism, just...
I think Ballermann is over, yes.
Ballermann
is dead, and it should be dead. But as you know, the opposite is true. Ballermann tourism is exactly what is developed in the south, but you have to take your own decisions what kind of tourism you would like to have.
Mr. Sijilmassi.
Well, let me give you this piece of information first, before I come back to my point.
I have it in my mind.
Yes, let's keep it in our mind, but since Professor has been talking about so many interesting things that I have to catch up on this. Here's a piece of information that I think is interesting and relevant to what you were saying. And it creates the link with the Union for the Mediterranean activity. As you know, we work on the basis of concrete projects. Because one of the things that we have learned in the history of the Mediterranean affairs is that we need to build on realities. We need to build on concrete things. I think the time for speeches has gone way past behind us, and we are at a time of needed action. One of the areas in which we have been acting, and indeed a result will be coming up very soon, is the Mediterranean Solar Plan, Master Plan. Because there was this idea, right from the beginning in 2008, to have a Mediterranean Solar Plan. So it's good to put it on a piece of paper and to say we want a Mediterranean Solar Plan. But how, when you take a pen and a white paper, how do you actually get things written and done? So we have been working on it. The team of the UFM has been working along with major stakeholders. And here I would like to highlight the very active participation of Germany in this area. And this is one of the areas in which Germany has not only been active but also proactive. And when I say Germany, it's both the government in its plurality of stakeholders and institutions, but also the industry, because it goes hand in hand. But on December 11th of this year, the Mediterranean Solar Plan, the Master Plan, will be put into adoption in front of the member states, and I'm rather optimistic and hopeful that it will be adopted, and that would create the framework that will allow us to actually make some pilot projects start bringing productions and exports and investment and training within the framework of the overall master plan. Because we need the master plan. We need to have the global picture. Because when you talk about activities in solar energy, you talk about grids, you talk about legislations, you talk about regulations, you talk about prices, you talk about a lot of technical things on which I will not bore you this evening, but just for you to know that it's a lot of work, a lot of chapters, a lot of administration, but also some interactions with the private sector. So this is just to show you that as Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Jordan, Israel, and of course all the other South European countries, Cyprus, Greece, and all the others have solar strategies, we are framing everything into a coherent global framework in order to have the Mediterranean solar plan that will be put before the governments on December 11th in Brussels, and I hope that it will be adopted. So it's just to create the link with what we were just saying, to make it one step further. And I, just a couple of days ago, I was in the south of Morocco, in Ouarzazate, participating to the inauguration of the 160 megawatt plant that is a pilot project, in a way, within the Moroccan solar plan itself, within the framework of the overall Mediterranean solar plan.
But Mr. Sijilmassi, isn't it important to have, first of all, political stability in the countries before we go for any kind of master plans and so on? Because right now we have, well, the post-Arab Spring section right now, and in other countries, for example, in Algeria or in Libya, nothing is not very well right now. I mean, for example, especially because of the Mali crisis and because of the Islamism that's going on. Isn't it more important to have political stability before we're going on for economic stability?
Mali was exactly the point I wanted to raise earlier.
As you see, we take the same.
I wanted to put things into a global perspective, that the Mediterranean is not only about South neighborhood. I believe that Mediterranean is much more than that. It's centrality. Centrality because you have behind the North African countries, behind the Mediterranean countries, you have Africa. Africa with its potential, its opportunities, its growth. Let us not forget that there is not one day that you don't have in all African countries huge delegations from China, from South Korea, from Turkey, from Brazil, from Indonesia, from all the countries that are interested in double-digit growth that there is in many numbers of African countries. So there are opportunities, but there are also, let's face it, some elements of risk, security-related, such as the crisis that we have witnessed in Mali. But the crisis that we have witnessed in Mali did not come overnight. There's a long history to that crisis. And a country like Morocco, and I know a certain number of other countries in the region, have raised the awareness for at least a decade ago on the risks that there is there. And the best way to tackle and to address those risks is to have a much more integrated, much more a stronger regional integration in the Maghreb, in the relation between Europe and the Mediterranean, so that there is more growth and prosperity and stability in this part of the world that actually creates the conditions also to broader stability and strengthen relationship with the countries in the Sahel and the Sahara. So it is very important to understand that it is, as I was saying earlier, a win-win situation, that we are actually winning both on terms of economic benefits, but we are also winning on the positive effects on stability and security, that actually when you look at the threats that can come from Mali and all the Sahel-Saharan region, that actually Europe and the Mediterranean are hand in hand in defining the future and defining the agenda and defining the appropriate dynamics that create the condition for the solution to this area. So it is very important to take that into consideration. If you allow me to make just one final comment on...
Final, because Mr. Leggewie also wanted...
Of course. I just wanted to make a final comment on the two examples. And I understand the point that we should not only look at export-oriented activities, and certainly not the way in the 70s or in the 80s we were looking at subcontracting. At that time in textile and clothing there was a lot of subcontracting and there was not much value added. But I just want to remind you that in those two examples that I gave, but of course there are others, you would not imagine how many companies have actually invested around those major investments. So it creates the conditions for others to come in and to create companies, be it locals investing or internationals investing also. That creates jobs. That creates industries. Because we believe, and there's a very interesting UNDP report that you can read on the Arab world and the job creation in the Arab world, talking not only about the quantity of jobs to be created, but also the quality, because you cannot only create jobs that do not have a value added or a sustainability in time. And industry is certainly one of the areas in which sustainability is ensured, and all these activities that go around these big investments, we call them the champions, that you create around it a lot of Moroccan or other companies investing, promoting, and of course other international companies to join in. So it creates a grid, okay, a grappe of companies that actually create the conditions of a greater job creation and qualitative job creation. Thank you.
Hope so.
Yeah.
By the way, you can applaud if you want. I mean, it's for free. Professor Leggewie.
No, I would underline this and strengthen this. I think this kind of development is in our interest. First of all, in our own economic interest. It creates profits, for example, for solar industry, for renewables in Germany. We have an active market here, and so we shouldn't avoid exporting our facilities. We shouldn't hesitate to export some institutional arrangements like a feed-in tariff, which would be very interesting for this European grid, and we should not just Europeanize, but also internationalize what is called in Germany Energiewende, the energetic term. So this is one of the major instruments for green growth in Germany as well as in the Mediterranean area. That's number one. Number two is you were talking about political stability. It creates political opportunities if we do this. You were mentioning kind of hen and egg or chicken egg problem. What is first, economic growth and then political stability, or the other way around? The Chinese or the Koreans don't care. They care for political stable regimes, and it might be Gaddafi again, or it might be Ben Ali. Europeans wouldn't. They would hesitate to support another Ben Ali in Tunisia. They would also hesitate to support an Islamist regime.
I mean, this is understandable for...
Yes, absolutely. But nevertheless, this is democracy, and we should remind ourselves how revolutions went in the European history. What was stability, let's say, in 1849 in France or Germany? What was stability in 1918-19 in Germany or in other countries? Look at the courage and the foresight of people who invented the Marshall Plan for Germany and other European countries in 1948. This was not a stable democracy here. This was not political stability, what we had. But the investment of the Marshall Plan was exactly to give us a chance and not do the same as they did years ago after World War I. So this was exactly the courage and the wisdom of those who gave this. And what we would have in mind is now exactly a Marshall Plan for the Mediterranean countries. And this is exactly this kind of big thing we would have to do now, and not just hesitate and waiting for stability. The longer we wait, the stronger Islamists and other factors will become in this region. And democracies like in Portugal or in Spain, which have been established with European help in the 70s, would simply be in danger. So endangered. Because if you look at Greece, just to mention that, if you look at Greece, there's a Nazi party which has like 15% right now. And so this is exactly the Weimar picture one could give. Look at the wisdom and courage of those who gave Turkey a chance in the 80s after military coups and who were saying, no, this country will develop. And you know that this is one of the major accomplishments in the Mediterranean area, next to maybe Morocco and others, but mostly Turkey is exactly a leader. So we would have to invest in this kind of master plan for the South because of creating political stability with that. And let me mention one third thing. We are not entertaining ourselves with the energetic turn because it's green growth and it's political development in other countries. No, it's because of reasons which are much more important, like climate change and others. So I don't care where the investment comes from. The major thing is that we decarbonize our economies, or we start development in the South without using carbon energies too much. So there are three reasons why we should develop. We should support development in the South, and I think this is quite convincing, and it creates opportunities not just for the South but also for ourselves.
Mr. Sijilmassi, how can you convince your colleagues in Barcelona to help the Mediterranean or to...
The colleagues of the Secretariat?
Yes.
I'm their boss, so it's easy.
No,
No.
But he said better late than never. But in that case, I want to... Your diplomatic colleagues.
No, my point here is that the country is in transition. And as a matter of fact, we are all in transition. I mean, all the countries have some degree of transition in some state. But in particular, those countries who have witnessed a change of regime. I'm thinking about Tunisia. I'm thinking about Libya, who has just joined the UFM as an observer. Egypt, these countries, and of course also all the other countries in which there was not a revolution, but where there are evolutions, constant evolutions, modernization, democratization, economic growth, such as Morocco, such as Jordan. I think all these countries need support. It's like a family. The Mediterranean, the European Union with the Mediterranean, is like a family. And if someone has a need for support, one should be there. And I think that this support is very important. One should not just start criticizing on every single thing that is done on a short-term basis. This is an evolution. Can you imagine in a country like Libya, what are the needs today? The needs are huge. Of course there are challenges, but look at the potential. And more than that, think of what would happen if there was no support, if you just looked the other way. I think the consequences, not only on the country itself, but on the region, south, north, east, west, would, of course, be tremendous. So there is a need. There is a need for support. There is a clear identification of challenges, but also of opportunities. And think of, and I think this is really something to be not underestimated, but valued, which are the civil societies in the southern Mediterranean countries. Think of these young people, think of these women who every day do a fantastic job. I mean, we at the UFM Secretariat, we work on concrete projects with a lot of NGOs from the region. I can assure you, these are real models. These are real militants of innovation, of willingness to create wealth, jobs. And I think really this civil society, these young people, these women, should be supported, should be encouraged, and this is really one of the top priority of the UFM Secretariat that we are working on. I would just like to conclude here on this point on the importance of regional integration. I think I said that earlier, but I would like to come back to it. It is very important to step up this regional integration. I think we in the Mediterranean region, we have one of the lowest regional integration rate in the world. This is not acceptable in 2013. Because if we want to have solutions to growth, to development, to stability, to prosperity, we need to have large markets. Do you know that from Morocco to Egypt, just to take these countries, the size of the market is equivalent to Russia, which gives an idea about the importance of the opportunities that are there. But if you look at it from a segmented point of view, the markets are very small. And of course, this is not only benefits for big companies, but for all the small and medium-sized companies.
Aren't that countries then too much competitive with each other then? Or
you mean in competition?
In competition?
I don't think that the countries are in competition. It might be in the minds of some that there is a competition. But frankly, when you are in Morocco, in Tunisia, or Egypt, do you think that competition is between those countries when you have at the same time Chile, Mexico, Malaysia, South Africa, Poland? When you have these countries, do you think that the competition is between those countries? Obviously not.
I would even say
the world is a village.
I would even say that competition creates integration. Because the problem is exactly that, for example, Morocco and Algeria, they have no interconnectivity as it would be normal in the Maghreb situation.
Unfortunately.
So there are historical reasons why this is not the case. Colonial ones, because everything was directed to Paris, and post-colonial ones, because Morocco and Algeria were in trouble with each other. Even the border was closed when I was living there in the 70s in Algeria.
It's still closed.
It's still closed, yeah, but it's easier to get over. But nevertheless, so I very much appreciate your idea of the new regionalism in Europe. We are thinking about forms of integration. You are either a member of EU or you aren't. Like Croatia now will become a member, and everybody is already thinking, is that the right step to do? I'm in favor of integration of Croatia, but nevertheless, we should think about new forms of regionalism that are more inclusive, but would not hold for a strict membership status. That could be true for Turkey, because the Turks have also different ambitions now, a kind of neo-Osman vision towards the east, which is appropriate, which is okay, which is historically may be reasonable. I don't know, but nevertheless, we should have a couple of regional clusters all over Europe, and one of the major clusters will be Euro-Mediterranean Union. We have other clusters like the Baltic Sea cluster. We have the Alp-Adria connection between Italy, Hungary, Austria, etc. We will have a Balkan Union, and this is exactly how European Union, how integration can proceed in the future. And there, Euro-Mediterranean Union might even serve as a model. But it's true that we are under-integrated right now. We are backward in relation to even other regions in the world like South America or Eastern Asia. So this is exactly one of the things we were missing. If we talk about regions in Europe, we mostly think about Catalonia or Northern Ireland, so a kind of separatist, parochial, primordial regionalism. This is not what I mean. It's an open, inclusive regional integration in kind of concentric circles around the core of Europe, which has been the former European Economic Community, but that has enlarged and can even include Russia and other partners for the futures. We must simply develop these kind of visions, even it looks a bit utopian what I'm saying. We must have these kind of visions, because for the rest it's just resignation, it's just stagnation, and it's just getting rid of those pigs in the south, and this is not the thing they deserve. And still have in mind what was just mentioned. We have the responsibility to give a future and a chance to those in the south who were supporting and mobilizing this Arab rebellion. This is our duty to give them a chance, and this includes now countries like Spain, Portugal, and Greece. We have to do something for the youngsters over there.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you now the opportunity to ask questions to Mr. Sijilmassi and Professor Leggewie. If you want, just raise your hand, and my colleagues over there will give you the microphone and you can ask your question. On the fourth row here, the lady, yes.
To your last sentences, how can we support this integration to the South? How? Mm-hmm.
Before you answer, let's collect a couple of questions and then go on. There was the gentleman over there, then the lady here, and the gentleman here. Over there, the gentleman.
Thank you. I would like to ask of some Janus-faced politics from the European Union. It's called Frontex, and it's called the agro-subventions to export the products from Europe, especially also to the Maghreb. And I think when we will have, perhaps one day, a real Mediterranean Union, it could not be that the European community, even Germany, stops the entering of young, well-formed people, educated young people to Europe. Even it's, for my mind, necessary to have a change between the European community countries and the Maghreb countries or other countries in the Mediterranean Sea to develop us and our countries. And what's your mind of that?
Thank you. The gentleman on the second row here, yeah?
Schönen Dank. I will speak in German.
Bitte schön. Warten Sie ganz kurz, dass Herr Sijilmassi den Kopfhörer kurz aufsetzt und dann... Bitte schön.
Ja, danke schön. Wir haben ja hier Veranstaltungen, Körber-Debate, wo dann zwei Parteien sind und gegeneinander sprechen. Und dann hebt man rote und grüne Karten und so weiter. In dem Zusammenhang möchte ich sagen, dass ich meine beste Karte, meine beste Bewertung für Herrn Sijilmassi geben würde. Denn das, was Sie, sehr geehrter Herr Professor, sagen, ist so teilweise unrealistisch, also aus meiner Sicht. Ich bitte um Verlaub. Aber wenn Sie sagen, es geht hier um Deutschland helfen, also die Länder sollten Deutschland helfen, dann halte ich das für nicht zielführend. Und Sie sagen, wir haben ein Problem mit Nordafrika. Ich denke, Nordafrika hat ein Problem und das muss gelöst werden. Und wenn da Investitionen hinlaufen sollten, dann ist die Grundbedingung dafür, dass dort Ruhe einkehrt und Stabilität. Sonst
also Sie befürworten auch eher eine politische Stabilität, bevor eine ökonomische Stabilität dort angesiedelt wird?
Nein, das kann ruhig parallel laufen. Aber man darf das eine nicht zur Voraussetzung machen für das andere, sondern das sollte beides gleichzeitig laufen. Und wir sind auch nicht untrennbar verbunden, wie das in der Einladung hier heißt, sondern wir sind einfach Partner. Und das, was hier diskutiert wird, man sollte dann auch noch Russland in die EWG nehmen und alles. Sie können ja alle Länder der Welt in die EWG reinnehmen. Dann sind doch alle Probleme dieser Welt gelöst. Das wäre doch fantastisch.
Dann wäre alles ganz... Was sagen Sie? Hatten Sie noch eine Frage denn?
Ja, eine Frage, das geht um die Partnerschaft. Sie sagten Entwicklungshilfe und Sie sagten keine Entwicklungshilfe, sondern Partnerschaft. Und ich finde, Partnerschaft ist sowieso das Allerbeste in dem Zusammenhang.
Oh, Ihre Frage habe ich zwar nicht gerade rausgehört, aber...
Ob Sie dem zustimmen können.
Also, okay. I think now we've got three questions on the whole. First was how the integration will work, Professor Leggewie. Second of all, I just have Frontex in my mind, and how do young, well-educated youngsters will kept in Europe and not go to some other countries? And the third was partnership, yes, or development. First, how the integration, Professor Leggewie?
Now, the question was more concrete. How can we support civil society in these countries? And this can be done there's a huge of opportunities to do this. I'm just thinking about two institutions here in Germany who would support civil society in the south, particularly here in the Arab countries. Number one is the Goethe Institute, which has to be praised for that, because it's one of the most active NGOs now in Egypt and in Tunisia. And it helps exactly this sector between the old regime and the Islamists, which is called civil society, and needs support, particularly the women. So this is one, and another is a network of political education institutions, starting with the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung, who supports a network called NECE, N-E-C-E, which exactly is doing a good job in kind of supporting democratization in these countries, giving institutional support, giving education, giving an exchange, because it's not just that they have to learn from us, we also can learn from them. This is one of the, and you can find thousands of these initiatives. Even our foreign ministry does a lot now in these countries. It's less important what we're doing in Spain and Portugal, for example. I think we should do the same there. We should also support civil society there. Number two was Frontex. Of course, it has to be changed. The Frontex regime must be more inclusive. We can think about green card solutions for people not just from the southern European countries, but also from North Africa, to have them maybe educated here, maybe have professional education here. So a lot of things can be done on a green card basis, or a blue card if you like. So we could have Frontex regime open to a regime that could be called a welcome culture. And I think it's again in our own interest and in its interest of many people who would come to the north for, let's say, 6 months or 12 months and then go back. That's what's happening with Turkish people who are educated
Actually, my
here.
father wanted to come just for 2 years and then go back, and yes, you can see I'm sitting here 40 years later.
Absolutely, and we're proud that you're here.
Thank you very much.
So,
but,
but nevertheless, a lot of people from the third and second generation are now going back to Turkey because the opportunities are better for them in their mind.
And that's the question now for Mr. Sijilmassi, because I want to ask him.
I would like to add one thing, because agro-subventions were also mentioned. Agro-subventions are a problem. A European Union that is really mostly based in their budget on agro-subventions is a wrong idea. It must be changed immediately. And ministers of agriculture are even thinking about it. And I will not talk about Russia. I wasn't saying that Russia has to be included in the European Union. This was a misunderstanding. I was talking about concentric circles around the core of Europe, which is the EU. And then there can be other regional associations be connected to them. I wasn't talking about having Morocco or Egypt or Russia or Faroe. No, they are a member.
They are a member, I'm sorry. Okay.
Of the European Union. So I think this was a misunderstanding.
Mr. Sijilmassi, Frontex and the well-educated youngsters.
Well, I just want to tell you that on a personal note, I have been following Mediterranean affairs with different capacities for at least 2 decades now, and I have done a lot of speeches and lectures and written articles and said everything. Today I'm a strong believer in action rather than speeches, because as I was saying earlier, we have reached the limit in our speeches, because speeches are always wishful thinking. You know, you wish and you say we should and we could and we will and we can, and then what? And here we are, talking about more or less the same things that we would have talked about if we had organized such a meeting perhaps 20 years ago. With a little differences.
Are there not even the clothes, but I mean, are there steps now
I believe in action. Of course, there are 2 ways to have action. The best way is to have a very strong political will and decision that then it's top down and it's implemented and there's a strong political will. This has yet to come. But my question here to you is the alternative to this not happening top-down, strong approach, is the alternative nothing? This is where I say no. The alternative, and so what I call the second best solution, but it can actually link up with the first best solution, is to do the bottom-up approach and to build on concrete things, to build on concrete projects, and this is what the UFM is doing today. Let me now answer the first question, Madame, about how do we support civil society. Let me tell you about a project we have implemented, 2 weeks ago. It's called Young Women as Job Creators. 4 countries, only 4 countries, because we work on a basis very pragmatic, variable geometry. 4 countries have expressed the will to enter the program. We said welcome, and then we leave it open to others to join in. This is about going to universities to educate, so to speak, 10,000 young women students to create their own company. Because the idea of going to university is not only to have a job after that. You can create your own company. And we have created a link with many universities in 4 Mediterranean countries through the NGOs of women associations, not through us. We're not the doers. We are supporting the doers because it's this capacity building that is important. And so we support these business associations, these women business associations, which themselves go work with academic circles, universities, to promote and to educate 10,000 young women to create their companies, and we are targeting the creation of 400 business ideas out of those 10,000 in order to create 100 companies. So this is action on the ground, and as we have launched it and started implementing it, immediately other countries have expressed their interest to join in, and we can have the snowball effect in order to actually do the bottom-up approach, and we are hoping that this will yield the appropriate results. So this is how we can help civil society. On Frontex and agro-subvention, of course, I will not make the political statements that have been made because I'm not in a position to do so, but I can tell you that mobility is certainly a key word here. And here again, is it enough just to state it? It's stating the obvious. But how can we go about it, knowing that there is a reality, that there are visas, that if I have a diplomatic passport, if I'm in Schengen, if I want to go to the UK, I have to have a visa. I have to go through the UK embassy and have this and that, because it's not Schengen. Because even within the European Union, there are differences in mobility systems between European Union countries. I read recently that Romania and Bulgaria had different schemes, and so there are differences. So there are realities that we can talk about endlessly. How can we go about it? We have decided to launch a program of mobility for students because we believe that it's about time to create a Mediterranean Erasmus. Erasmus has been very efficient in the European Union. It's about time to create something similar. We might not call it the same, but something similar. And here also, we are going to start the program at a certain level, and of course, make the snowball effect, making it grow. And this program will have the ease for circulation of the concerned students, of course. But we should do the same for business communities, for the university, etc. So I agree with you, okay? I hope that there will be positive evolution, and certainly we will work towards that as a UFM. I'd like to...
Can we wrap up a little bit, because I think there are a couple of more questions.
I will just say that I agree with you, sir.
You gave him the green card.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you can show him the green card, exactly. Further questions? And as I said, nobody will raise his hands, and that's very bad for me.
Yeah, because we were talking about we were praising action and not words. I like to talk to you, so that's why I would like to hold for more speech and more words right now, because there are no doers without chatters, as you know. And what you were saying is everything is perfect, but there is no political resonance for what you are saying in German politics. That is one of the major problems. There is no lobby in the parliament. You don't have the ear of the chancellor. You would deny that you have it, but in general, the Mediterranean issue is not on their main agenda. You wouldn't have think tanks in Germany who are really engaged in Mediterranean politics and who are really into the Arab rebellion. So there's a lot of things that must be done, particularly here in Germany. It's completely different in France and other countries, even Spain, Italy.
Yeah, France is another.
But nevertheless, there must be a lot of talk before we have political action in this country, because the political class in Germany is simply not convinced of what we both were saying here and developing. And the public, as you see, is rather skeptical. I really go for this, that I'm a utopian. But look, please, where the realists have brought us. Look, please, where the so-called realists have brought us. They knew exactly where to go, what will happen in the Mediterranean. Frontex was fine. The old division of labor, everything went fine, and then things happened since 2008. That's really blame those realists, the real utopians. So I would hold for a new vision, but still we have to bargain for that a lot in this country, and it's in a way we are part of the Mediterranean, of the UFM, but we don't even know it, we don't even recognize it.
But it's a kind of utopia, especially that.
No, it's
piece of masterpiece here.
Absolutely realistic.
You think so?
Absolutely.
But the gentleman doesn't agree with you.
Yes, of course. It's a free country.
No, I think that it is a fact that we are lagging behind in terms of awareness, okay, of global awareness, because there is a high level of short-term emergencies all the time. But at the same time, I don't know if it's my personal nature or just a wish to share it with you, but I feel that there are some encouraging signs. And I want to build on those signs. This is it, that the way I see it is that we are progressing. The direction, to me, is the right direction. The speed might not be, and the amplification of it certainly needs to be highlighted. But the direction of working together, when I see, for example, all the international financial institutions, the European Investment Bank, the EBRD, the World Bank, all these, and others, of course, are joining efforts in order to work better and better together.
Yeah, but Mr. Sijilmassi, what do we need to speed this process up? The direction is right, but the speed is wrong, you said. But how can we give it a little bit more pepper?
I didn't say the speed was wrong. I say the speed can be speeded up.
And how?
I think that we need two things. We need to continue consolidating the bottom-up approach, because we need to prove benefits on the ground.
But the bottom-up approach needs money.
Yes, but it needs also willingness and hard work, okay? And this we can achieve. It also needs, and this is probably where I'm in full agreement with what you said, it also needs a political impulse, a permanent one. Let me just give you an example. Beyond internal politics in Germany, which of course I have no knowledge of, but as we are speaking, the president of the European Parliament, Martin Schulz, is a very strong believer and supporter of UFM. Absolutely. He has been a very strong asset to what we are developing. He came to Barcelona to visit us twice in 1 year, and encouraging all the projects, encouraging all the initiatives, and actually organizing a meeting of the chairman of all the Euro-Mediterranean parliaments recently in Marseille, which was a major political event to raise the awareness of all the stakeholders in the region. Let me say that this observation that you are correctly, by the way, doing about the lack of awareness, you can have it also in the south. Because in the southern countries, where you have huge transformation, if you are in downtown Tunis, or in downtown Tripoli, or in downtown Cairo, it's not obvious that the UFM is the top priority. It is obvious. But here also, it takes a lot of pedagogy, a lot of communication, a lot of facts on the ground to show that regional cooperation, because this is what the UFM is about, regional cooperation actually is an accelerator factor for development, for growth, and of course, therefore, for peace and stability. So it's 1 + 1 = 3. This is the whole equation. And so it takes a lot of lobbying, a lot of sensibilization, a lot of pedagogy, a lot of communication. And we, of course, we are doing it as the UFM Secretariat in Barcelona, but we are not the only ones, because the member states and all the other institutions are also members of that. And I would just like to point out, speaking of Germany, that we have started a series of meetings with German parliamentarians to be discussing the UFM affairs, to be discussing the perspectives, the strengths and weaknesses, because they need to have more information about what we are developing, but we need also their support in what we are developing, in order to create this exchange of information. And I'm actually receiving in Barcelona, early June, a delegation of 10 parliamentarians from Germany who will come to Barcelona to get broader knowledge about what is going on. So what I'm saying here is that there is a process. The speed needs to be triggered a little bit higher, but I'm feeling that what the Arab Spring has shown is that I would say that it arrived to two main conclusions. One is that human being is at the center of all. And maybe before that, that had been forgotten. Even in terms of cooperation, in terms of development policies, in terms of infrastructure policies, you can do it all, but you never forget that human being is at the center of everything. This is why everything that deals with strengthening civil societies, creating the mobilities, creating the interactions is really a top priority. And second is that we cannot continue working on bilateral North-South schemes. You have to work on horizontal regional integration schemes. It will take the time it will take, but it's top priority and it has to start progressing.
I think that's a very good finishing sentence. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Fathallah, Sijilmassi, and Professor Claus Leggewie for being here. You have the opportunity afterwards to ask questions personally to both of our guests here. And thank you very much again being here at Körber Foundation. And Dr. Pause want to say some words. Thank you very much and see you next time.
Ja, meine Damen und Herren, wir sind am Ende einer spannenden Diskussion angelangt. Ich möchte ganz herzlich unserem Kooperationspartner der Deutsch-Arabischen Freundschaftsgesellschaft, Frau Wohin, für die gute Zusammenarbeit bedanken. Auch für diese Veranstaltung. Die Deutsch-Arabische Freundschaftsgesellschaft setzt sich ein für eine bessere Verständigung zwischen Deutschland und der arabischen Welt. Das ist ein Ziel, das auch der Körber-Stiftung am Herzen liegt. Deswegen passen wir so gut zusammen. Ich selbst habe mich während der Diskussion erinnert an meine Zeit nach dem Abitur, als ich die verrückte Idee hatte, mit meinem VW-Bus und einem Freund einmal um das Mittelmeer zu fahren. Das ist damals einfach daran gescheitert, dass die Grenzen nicht durchlässig waren an allen möglichen Enden. Das ist heute wahrscheinlich nicht einfacher als damals, aber vielleicht trägt die Mittelmeerunion, die Union für das Mittelmeer oder auch Bücher wie das von Herrn Leggewie dazu bei, dass das irgendwann einmal möglich sein wird. In diesem Sinne Ihnen allen einen schönen Abend und bis zum nächsten Mal. Dankeschön.